New Zealand, one of the last remnants of a sunken continent. Apart from being one of the last few landmasses to be colonized by humans, this archipelago is also well known for its unique biodiversity. With its vast array of unusual bird species, both past and present, one could argue that this intriguing land may very well be a modern-day stronghold for avian dinosaurs. But apart from the many archosaurs claiming dominion over these lands, there resides here another ancient reptilian relic scurrying about in the underbrush. Its form may seem familiar, but it bears the blood within it of a far more ancient order that coexisted with the giants of the Mesozoic era. And though this order of animals has lost the prominence it once had, one last member of this storied family still exists to this day. This is the Tuatara, the reptile that time forgot. While the Tuatara existed for millions of years, it didn't encounter humans until way later in the Holocene epoch. Around 1200 to 1300 AD, the first humans reached New Zealand, giving rise to the Maori culture. Following their settlement, the Tuatara became ingrained into their folklore. Among these legends include their association with the Maori god of death, Wiro, alongside lizards such as geckos and skinks. Tuataras are also featured in various creation myths and are viewed as guardians of knowledge by some tribes. There were also heavy restrictions when it came to hunting and consuming Tuataras, as only the men that left their homes to catch these reptiles were allowed to eat them. If those that stayed behind ate the caught individuals, they'd risk angering the Tuataras. Women were apparently forbidden from eating Tuataras due to not possessing the mana or spiritual power required. If a Maori woman were to eat a Tuatara, then all the others would kill her. Tattoos of lizards and possibly even Tuataras are common in New Zealand, with some women even having tattoos of either reptile near their genitals. Another legend involving the Tuatara is the belief that they descended from a deity in Maori folklore known as Punga, son of the sea god Tangaroa and the ancestor of all creatures deemed deformed and ugly, one of which including the Tuatara alongside lizards and even sharks and rays. As a matter of fact, their common name is of Maori origin, with the name Tuatara meaning peaks on back or spiny back. Following the arrival of Europeans in New Zealand, a skull was given to British zoologist John Edward Gray, being the first to coin the genus name SpinoDragon, meaning wedge tooth. During this time, the Tuatara was also incorrectly classified as a species of lizard and would remain so until 1867 when German-British herpetologist Albert Charles Louis Gotthilf Gunther noticed similar traits on the Tuatara to other sauropsids such as crocodilians, turtles, and birds. He then proposed the order name Rhynchocephalia, which the Tuatara is currently placed in. For a brief period of time, Rhynchocephalia was used as a wastebasket taxon as many different reptile species were being grouped into it until American paleontologist Samuel Wendell Williston proposed the classification Sphenodontia to strictly include Tuataras and their closest extinct relatives. However, Rhynchocephalia is instead still used today as the order representing Tuataras and their kin, while Sphenodontia is used as a clade within the order, though ironically enough, the Tuatara is part of a separate clade altogether. All in all, the Tuatara has found itself to be a very culturally significant species, along with being a taxonomic enigma to many scientists over the centuries. The Tuatara is the biggest reptile of New Zealand, aside from its birds, which being dinosaurs themselves, make them technically a type of reptile. Like other non-avian reptiles, they are completely covered with scales, and their backs are covered by folded spines. Their spines resemble those of iguanas, which are more noticeable in males since females possess smaller spines. The heads, however, look different from squamates due to possessing a beak-like structure in the skull, of which their order is named for, as Rhynchocephalia translates to beak heads. Their tails also look quite similar to crocodilians rather than lizards, which adds to their distinction from traditional squamates. Interestingly enough, tuataras also share the same adaptations for caudal autotomy, which allows their tails to fall off and regenerate. They also come in several colors, which change as they age, but the most common are olive green and at times can be either brown, orange, and or red. The male tuatara's length is about 61 centimeters or 24 inches and weighing at about 1 kilogram or 2.2 pounds, while females reach about 45 centimeters or 18 inches and weigh up to half a kilogram or 1.1 pound. While they might seem indistinguishable from lizards to the untrained eye, tuataras have enough unique characteristics to help differentiate them from reptiles within Squamata, easily making them among some of the most peculiar modern reptiles. The tuatara is one of the most unique animals in the Reptilia class. However, it might not seem as such at first glance. One could be forgiven for thinking this animal was a squamate, as it looks nearly identical to the hundreds of different species of lizards alive today. However, this couldn't be more wrong, as the tuatara is actually the last surviving member of an ancient clade of animals called Rhynchocephalians, an ancient sister taxon to Squamata in the Lepidosauria clade. Rhynchocephalians have existed on Earth for about 240 million years from the Middle Triassic period to now. This was theorized based on the findings of the oldest known Rhynchocephalian, Württembergia, which was excavated from the Erfurt Formation during the Ladinian stage of the Middle Triassic. The exact timing when Rhynchocephalians diverged from squamates is still being questioned by paleontologists, but it's suggested that it is possible that it could have happened as early as the Middle to Late Permian. During the Late Triassic, the Rhynchocephalians began to expand their diversity, a process which may have fully occurred after the Triassic-Jurassic mass extinction. Many reptiles from the order had evolved into different shapes and sizes, along with having different ecological niches. These reptiles include the likes of Clevosaurus, Diffidontosaurus, Gephyrosaurus, and Planocephalosaurus. With their successful adaptations, they were able to occupy the entirety of the supercontinent Pangaea. They then became even more diverse during the Jurassic period, with some evolving to have an aquatic lifestyle and a diet of crustaceans, like Saphiosaurus and Oenosaurus respectively. One particular genus from the early Cretaceous, Ankylosphenodon, even developed a herbivorous diet. However, during the early Cretaceous, the Rhynchocephalians began to decline, disappearing in regions like North America, Europe, North Africa, and northern South America. The cause for their decline was likely down to the increasing distribution of lizards and mammals that easily adapted to the extreme conditions in the Cretaceous, which led to competition. But some did indeed remain in the southern parts of South America, since lizards at the time weren't as common in the area. Despite this increased competition, they were able to live alongside dinosaurs during the rest of the Mesozoic era. Surprisingly, it was thought that dinosaurs never lived in New Zealand since there weren't any fossils found. That was until New Zealand paleontologist Joanne Whiffen found the first ever fossil of a dinosaur in 1975, which belonged to a theropod along with remains belonging to a hypsilophodont, a pterosaur, and even more shockingly, a titanosaur, meaning that the tuatara's ancestor may have coexisted with dinosaurs during its time. It's also worth mentioning that the lost continent of Zealandia broke away from Antarctica and Gondwana between 82 to 60 million years ago, only for the continent to later sink into the ocean around 25 million years later during the Miocene epoch, leaving behind the New Zealand archipelago along with other islands such as New Caledonia, Norfolk Island, and Ball's Pyramid as the last remnants of this sunken continent. The Rhynchocephalians also went through another mass extinction, the KPG mass extinction that wiped out all the non-avian dinosaurs, as well as 75% of all life on Earth. Fortunately, some animals, such as the Rhynchocephalians, survived. As to how this order survived, when analyzing tuataras and their adaptations, it's noted that these animals could slow down their metabolism, meaning they can survive without food for a long time, possibly even a year, which led the order to survive into the Cenozoic era. Despite surviving the mass extinction, only a few Rhynchocephalians remained, like the omnivorous and Paleocene-dated Sphenodon. Despite the longevity of the order, the rise of the mammals and lizards after the Mesozoic era eventually saw about the end of the Rhynchocephalians as a group, with the last outpost of this order being the islands that make up New Zealand. One of them was an intermediate reptile dated back to the Miocene that could possibly be either an ancestor of Tuatara or Tuatara itself. Despite the order being nearly extinct, the Tuatara stubbornly persists as the last member of its lineage, belonging to the genus Sphenodon and the species Punctatus. Sphenodon belongs to a family called Sphenodontidae, which also contains Navajo Sphenodon, Cynosphenodon, and Sphenophontis, with of course Sphenodon being the only extant animal of the family. As for when Sphenodon itself evolved, this is less clear. There have been arguments that most of New Zealand was submerged by the sea between the late Oligocene and Miocene due to the lack of Oligocene sediments. If that were the case, it would mean a population of Sphenodon existed outside of New Zealand and colonized it after the Oligocene. But this idea still wouldn't explain how the animals made it to the archipelago in the first place, since no fossil material of said outside population has ever been uncovered. It was speculated that small islands were likely near New Zealand during the Oligocene, and once most of the New Zealand archipelago resurfaced in the Miocene, its ancestors along with other animals migrated into the landmass that they would eventually call home. This idea was supported by the current modern population of Sphenodon living on the offshore islands of New Zealand, so it's not impossible that they may have persisted on small islands until they were finally able to walk on the main islands. It was initially thought that two different species of this animal existed, with the second one being known as the Brothers Island Tuatara. However, a 2009 paper looking into the genetics of the animals concluded that both animals were of a singular species. The only differences being that the Brothers Island Sphenodon were smaller in size and have slightly different colorations. Where it stands now, the Tuatara is the last surviving member of its order, calling New Zealand its home. And hopefully in given time, we will find more fossil evidence on how these reptiles made it to New Zealand. The Tuatara's range is restricted to the New Zealand archipelago, the largest remaining landmass of Zealandia. Originally they inhabited the main islands, but as of now they are restricted to 32 offshore islands in New Zealand, including the Brothers Islands in the Cook Strait, and several others in the Marlborough Sounds and the Mercury Islands group farther up north. When it comes to preferred habitats, Tuataras largely inhabit areas with a harsh and cool climate, with a preference for regions with high grass cover and low tree cover. Tuataras are also burrowing animals. They typically stay in their burrows throughout the day and come out during the night. However, like most reptiles, when they do come out during the day, they bask under the sun. For burrows, they typically search for abandoned ones made by other animals, or make ones themselves. For their behavior, the Tuatara, like most reptiles, are solitary, though at times they might end up sharing a burrow system, but most of the time they prefer to keep to themselves. Tuataras also possess a fascinating third eye called a parietal eye. The exact function of this eye is still in question, but many believe it helps them determine the day and night cycles, along with detecting movement and such, though this is not confirmed. These third eyes can be observed on other reptiles, while for Tuataras the eye is mostly visible on juveniles, but as they age the scales cover up the organ, making it less visible on adults. In terms of diet, the Tuatara is carnivorous, and its feeding behavior is rather similar to that of various lizards. Interestingly, while the Tuatara have teeth like most reptiles, their teeth have become fused with their jaw bones, and there is almost no defining boundary between tooth and jaw. Additionally, their upper jaw possesses 2 rows of teeth, while the bottom jaw only contains 1. This bizarre adaptation helps them crush down tough invertebrates. Reptiles are also part of the Tuatara's diet, mainly small ones like geckos and skinks. Cannibalism is also observed by these reptiles, and they typically do view juveniles as food, so smaller individuals have to be careful around larger adults. It has also been noted that these reptiles will go after bird eggs and chicks, and in some instances, adults of smaller species. It was also noted that the chicks were swallowed whole, but when they were too big, they were able to escape from the reptile while sustaining injuries due to the chewing capabilities of the Tuatara's jaws. It's also noted that small birds were found with their heads removed, which were likely caused by Tuataras. The way these reptiles search for their food is by looking through burrows that some small animals inhabit, like invertebrates and the aforementioned small birds. But when it comes to fast-moving prey like geckos and skinks, they don't typically go after them, since they themselves are slow-moving reptiles. However, there are times where they're lucky enough to catch one. Seabirds also help tuataras via their feces, as avian guano helps increase the activity of insects, providing more food for tuataras. Some invertebrates uncovered from tuatara samples included insects such as darkling beetles, tree wettas, and giant wettas. As tuataras get older, their teeth wear down, and due to the fact that their teeth are fused to their jaws, they never get replaced, which causes them to switch diets from harder and tougher meals to ones consisting of easier prey like slugs and earthworms that are easier for them to consume. For mating behavior, males display their courtships by elevating their bodies off the ground and inflating, making somewhat of a purring or croaking sound to impress the female. Males will slowly walk forward towards the female and circle her. This form of courtship is known as the Stolzer gang or the proud walk. Once the female is impressed by the slow walk ritual, she will come out of the burrow, which allows the male to mount her. Interestingly enough, due to males lacking a certain reproductive organ, the mating action is performed by rubbing their cloacas together. Mating usually lasts for 90 minutes, but during those minutes, another male can interrupt the mating process by charging and fighting with the previous male in hopes of securing the female for himself. 10 to 12 months later, the females will then lay a clutch of 19 eggs in burrows, and the incubation process typically takes about 12 to 15 months. Like many other reptiles, the temperature of the nest can determine the sex of the reptiles, with much higher, warmer temperatures allowing for the development of males, while the lower temperatures favor the females. Once the babies are hatched, they are quick to move on somewhere else, looking for or digging burrows of their own since their mother doesn't protect them. On the main islands, tuataras coexisted with the region's several unique and signature birds. These include the modern-day kiwis, a small relative of emus and ostriches, and the kakapo, a flightless parrot and the largest in the world. Their former range may have also included some of the other endemic bird species such as the kaka parrots, along with various quails, falcons, and kestrels, just to name a few. They also would have coexisted with larger birds such as the moa, adsbill, and the Haast's eagle, the three of which have since gone extinct following the settlement of people on the islands. Today, they generally encounter more coastal bird species on the offshore islands, ranging from petrels to prions and shearwaters, perhaps even penguin species such as the little blue penguin. Among the native invertebrates, there's one peculiar arachnid known as the tuatara tick that solely feeds on the blood of tuataras and no other animals. Whether it be predators, prey, or inconsequential coexistence, tuataras live in perhaps one of the most unique ecosystems in the modern age, one that mirrors life on Earth from a bygone age. Tragically, however, this reptile can no longer experience the increased space it once had on the archipelago, and throughout history has unfortunately begun to decline in population as the years went on. Being the last of its kind, the persistence of the entire Rhynchocephalia order hinges on the tuatara's survival. Having made it through the end of the Pleistocene and into the Holocene epoch, the tuatara was first impacted by the arrival of the Polynesians in New Zealand, who were also accompanied by Polynesian rats, which caused an extirpation of the tuatara from the main islands and resulted in their restriction to the offshore islands by the late 1700s. Some of these islands have also experienced a spread of these rats, which continue to negatively impact the tuatara, one particular impact being the tuataras refusing to breed. Aside from rats, New Zealand has also seen the introduction of other invasive species including stoats, possums, and various hoofed mammals such as feral hogs. It also doesn't help that tuataras take a rather long time to reach sexual maturity, that being between 10 to 20 years, along with the fact that females are unable to breed for 2 years after laying eggs. Climate change has also impacted the tuatara's already dwindling population. With the increase in warm temperatures, these reptiles have begun to experience an uneven sex ratio, with more males hatching compared to females. The fragmentation of tuataras has also created a domino effect in that it has heavily impacted the distribution of the ticks dependent on them, as these arachnids only reside on 8 of the 32 offshore islands that tuataras still inhabit. One of the reasons for this decline may have also come from the removal of ticks following the capture and transfer of several tuatara specimens, along with the species' generally low density in the wild. Attempts to re-establish tuatara populations in the mainland have been performed, with the relocation of 200 tuataras in 2005 to Zealandia in Wellington, or the Karori Wildlife Sanctuary as it was once called, with a hatchling being discovered back in 2009, marking it the first time in 200 years that a tuatara was born on the main islands. Starting from 1995, the Brother Island subspecies was relocated from North Brother Island to other islands including TT Island, Long Island, and Matiu Somes Island, just to name a few. Fortunately, there is some good news regarding the tuatara's conservation, with the establishment of various breeding programs in captivity and their federal protection in New Zealand. Several zoos such as the Hamilton Zoo, Wellington Zoo, and the Auckland Zoo have been involved in trying to save the tuatara. In 2016, a tuatara reproduced in the Chester Zoo, marking the first time a tuatara was born outside of New Zealand. As of May 2024, there's an estimated 55,000 tuataras left in the world, and they're currently listed as least concern. However, with the continued presence of invasive species and the worsening climate change, they still run the unfortunate risk of going extinct, which would bring about a tragic end to such a long and storied lineage. But hope is not lost, however, as we still have a shot at saving this unique reptile. By aiding in the removal of non-native animals from the islands, donating to and supporting the zoos, nature reserves, and conservation projects, along with spreading awareness about these animals and playing our part in lessening the effects of climate change, we can help preserve the existence of Rhynchocephalia and prolong the existence of the tuatara, the reptile that time forgot. Thank you all so much for watching our latest episode of Extant Files. This video was a blast to make and we look forward to covering more modern animals in this series. This video was directed by myself, RangoGamer, and was scripted by myself along with MikeMC9797 and the Primal Earth. It was also edited by myself along with MikeMC9797, the Primal Earth, LegitEliminator, and Smoogoli. Animations were done by Mephilas Seijin101, and the research team consisted of MikeMC9797 and myself. And with that, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Epoch Now.